Get ready for a love story overload. Welcome to the Lover List, where we bring you the sassiest love, dating, and relationship tales straight from Reddit. Like, comment, subscribe, and turn on notifications if you dare to fall in love with our videos. What seemingly harmless personality traits ended up turning out to be a deal breaker in your relationships? Agreeability. After a while you realize they never make any decisions and just go with whatever you want to do, which makes it so that you make literally all the decisions. It's exhausting. So true, it's exhausting and it gets boring after a while. It's nice to be with someone that has their own opinions and ideas. Like you ask, what do you want to do this weekend, and it's always whatever you want to do. Any thoughts on dinner? Whatever you want. At some point it's like, please have an interesting idea or a mind of your own. Always funny. It's fine to be funny, but it becomes a problem when the person prioritizes being funny over being kind. They'll say something critical or sarcastic and try to hide behind humor. Or, being funny is such a big part of their identity that they will prioritize that over every else. I wish in my younger days I had prioritized kindness over being funny in men. My ex-husband was always on, and at first it was one of my favorite things about him, but over time it became exhausting. We could never have a serious conversation or any true intimate moments because there always had to be a joke in everything. OMG, my BF's friend just got divorced. He didn't see it coming. As soon as my BF told me he's this type of guy, I was like, yeah, I could see that happening. I couldn't stand a guy like that. His wife's sister had passed of cancer the last year, and I even mentioned, I wonder how comforting he was. Probably tried to cheer her up with jokes rather than just letting her grieve. He was always sweet and adoring towards me, while a complete monster to anyone/everyone on the outside. LOL, it's not that he has a soft spot for you. It only lasts so long before they switch up on you too. I feel you. I first was like, wow, he's protective of the ones he cares about, and to him the rest of the world can go self, but over time I realized that wasn't an admirable trait even if he personally treated me well. I want someone who will treat everyone with respect, even people they don't see in front of them. For example, he would park wherever he wanted even if it meant screwing other cars over. Passiveness. Turns out they were passive about everything, including what they wanted for their future, career, money, etc. There wasn't one thing in their life that they desired for themselves. I'm currently noticing this with my partner. It's rough and it hurts. Same, terrifying feeling I'm the only hope of us having savings, a house, helping the kids if we have some, move if we want. It's basically on my shoulders. I realize some people just want to live day by day and never plan anything and pretend they'll never get older and wish they had. Even if he couldn't, just having any ambition or goals is good. People pleasers. I used to think they were generous people with kind hearts, but over time I learned not to trust them because they're not true to themselves and are very resentful people due to their inability to say how they really feel. They do nice things to get you to like them, not because they actually want to. I don't like that. Oof. As a recovering people pleaser, what you said is on point, and I wish it were talked about more. It might help some people realize that their people-pleasing behavior is not healthy and that it doesn't reflect well on them. There's definitely an undercurrent of, usually unintentional, manipulation, feeling that it's your responsibility to manage the needs and emotions of everyone around you. Sadly, I think a lot of people pleasers don't realize their behavior is unhealthy and manipulative. Instead, they call themselves empaths that seek to help others. Not true at all. The best people to keep around you are those who have or are working towards establishing strong boundaries, because you'll never have to question the intentions of their actions. Conflict avoidance. Nobody wants to fight all the time, but an inability to have a disagreement without shutting down completely is not sustainable in an adult relationship. It only builds resentment. Agreed. When I met my boyfriend, I had asked him how things were in his previous relationships. He said he never got into arguments with his ex because he's just not the type. Sounded kind of peaceful TBH. As my mom always says, I grew up in a household where issues were solved by laying all of your cards on the table, even if it resulted in a screaming match. Whether you solved the problem or not, at least you knew exactly where you stood with everyone, and you always knew you were welcome at the dinner table. Next time I won't be so afraid to get into a relationship with someone who's angry sometimes and who calls me out every once in a while. It's better than ignoring everything until you don't even care about the person any longer. Poor education. Seemed like no big deal. He was able to provide. He did well in life. But that lack of quality conversation was just so boring. Disputatiousness. At first it felt like fun banter, but after a few years it was exhausting how he always had to be right. Couldn't even have minor disagreements like who the actor in a movie was without it becoming a whole thing, never mind if we actually needed to discuss something serious. My ex was like this. He never agreed with me on literally anything, even things as minor as the best cookie at our favorite shop. Everything was a disagreement. A lot of it was minor, but those add up. Confidence can very easily turn into condescension, and that quickly seeps into all interactions and builds animosity. I get what you mean here because my previous partner was doing things out of ego, not for me but for himself, masking it as if he was doing them for me. Kept my stomach full of anxiety because my intuition was screaming to run. It's hard to be with a person who doesn't see you. Any self-proclaimed empath. It turns into look how much I'm hurting because of your pain. Edit. The point I'm making is that people who claim to be empaths often make other people's emotions about them. Rather than letting a person grieve, it becomes about how much the other person's grief affects them. There's a limit to kindness I can take. I have been learning not to people please, but my husband still does because he wants to be kind. I love how kind he is, one of the reasons I married him, but he picks the worst people to be kind to, and even when I tell him it's a bad idea he feels he has to do it anyways, which has left us short on money and time a few times. Today it led to us being short a microwave. My ex was the same. He is genuinely a kind person, but just couldn't set any boundaries with anyone, including with me, and did not know how to prioritize himself. He was petrified to address anything that even remotely bothered him in our relationship, which seemed like a good thing at first. We never fought. What actually ended up happening is me assuming everything was great for the last 6 months of our relationship, and he had this growing hate/resentment towards me. I had one like this. She proposed then broke up with me 5 months later. I had no idea she wasn't happy. Yeah, I was blindsided when he ended things after nearly 2 years together. This was about a month and a half ago. I am still heartbroken, of course, but I am slowly starting to realize it was probably for the best. I don't want to be with someone who doesn't know how to communicate. Not being able to make decisions. It always kinda annoyed me that he had no opinion on what he wanted to eat or watch. But someday when he met someone he was interested in and the time came to choose between me and her, he had no idea how to choose. That's when I realized I had to make all the decisions, all the time. I even had to make the decision to end our relationship because he wasn't able to choose. Clinginess might be cute for the beginning, but turns out really stressful if you can't have a day for yourself like for the whole relationship. Calls, uninvited visits, etc. can start really nice as a sign of I think about you/care for you, but can also be a flag it might be a control freak. At least if you tell them to don't come over this day/weekend whatever and they eventually come over. Or if they call you constantly while they know you don't have time at this moment. Wanting to live together, decorate your flat after being in the relationship for a while. Yeah, why not discussing these topics? But if you're just together for a short time or clearly stated you don't want one of these or neither of both, and constantly bringing up these topics, or even starting to tell you how you have to arrange furniture or what you can buy and what not. People who avoid confrontation. No, it doesn't make you easy to get along with. It makes you frustrating to date because instead of communicating, you bottle things up and let resentment fester. I'm guilty of this. It ruined my recent long-term relationship. I would have mental breakdowns once a month because I kept everything to myself. I didn't realize how damaging it was until after we split up. I'm working on myself and it's gotten better, but I refuse to be in another committed relationship until I feel I can implement healthy boundaries and communicate effectively. I had a friend that was very invested/dedicated. At first, I thought this was a good personality trait, but it ended up being suffocating. She would constantly refer to me as her best friend even though she wasn't mine. She made very territorial social media posts about how I was her best friend in the entire world. If I hung out with other friends that she didn't even know, she would get annoyed that she wasn't invited. If I wanted to spend my free time alone, with my husband, with other people, etc., she would take it personally and make comments about it. She was jealous with the amount of time I hung out with my husband and said it wasn't fair and that I treated her differently than I treat him, obviously. OMG, I had a housemate exactly like this in university. Absolutely wild. She just latched onto different girls. The first girl ended up locking her room so this housemate wouldn't get in. She moved on to another girl, who then got a BF and obviously she hated. Then next girl was way too much of a pushover. No kidding, one night this poor girl had had enough and told her to and this housemate went and stood outside in the rain and wouldn't come in until this girl brought her in. Damn, this housemate was so obsessive and so rude. She had to have whoever she was obsessed with walk to and from lectures with her. She'd organize private things with the girls whilst other people were in the room. We'd all be sat having a nice time watching random TV and she'd turn to A and say, "Shall we watch Friends upstairs?" as if the whole of our house didn't watch Friends. Poor money management. Not everything is about money. But if you can't afford to support yourself while also somehow being able to afford frivolous wants, then that's a no-go. I will not be your stand-in mom and take care of you if you're capable of doing so yourself, just because you can't prioritize where your money goes. Yup. The older I get, the more finances matter to me when it comes to partners. I used to think it was shallow to care about money, but the reality is that how you think about and spend money plays a part in just about every aspect of regular life. For me, it was messiness. It translated to me being responsible for all the housework and cleaning up after his mess. I became a caregiver, not a partner. This is a big deal if you have very different levels of cleanliness. This wasn't why I left my partner, but it was a constant issue that I felt would never change. I'd ask him all the time to do the smallest stuff, like occasionally wipe his hair off the bathtub lip. I cleaned everything else while I showered, and even after leaving wipes for this purpose right there on the tub, he never did it once. It wasn't even my mess, but I had to clean it every time in addition to all the regular cleaning I did of our mutual stuff. I loved him and he was great in so many ways, but asking him to be cleaner never clicked for him. Never, ever, ever. He'd say sorry. He'd say, "Okay, I'll work on that," but he never did. He was too chill, always wanted to go with the flow. He wanted to stay inside almost every time we hung out. Towards the end, we basically stopped talking to each other altogether and would only really do our own thing but near each other, and then take breaks where we talk and cuddle, which was super nice sometimes, but it got old eventually. It felt like we went from dating to just being friends without saying anything about it. I relate so much to this. The last month of our relationship, we didn't even have the cuddle part. We just had the being in each other's company part. It was exhausting. Being too woke for a joke. I say this as a leftist and as someone who has dedicated my life to activism. Of course, at first it seems great to have someone so sensitive and conscious and ethical by your side. But if you cannot understand other points of view, or simply lighten the EFF up every now and again, or understand the emotional context of someone's words, you are not progressive, you are a buzzkill and bot policing. My ex found a way to make everything negative, political, or downright depressing. He was an improv teacher. One of his students was in an improv scene where one student said, "Hey my dude, stop twirling your beard," and the other student said, "No, I don't have a beard, I'm clearly a woman." And instead of stopping the scene for breaking improv rules, he stopped it for being transphobic. I was told this by a student who had no clue the teacher was my boyfriend. This was in a major metropolitan city where we all clearly have friends of every background, and it was fair to say everyone in that improv community was progressive or unproblematic. Of course, when I met him, we were on the same page ethics-wise and politically, but the longer we were together, the more I wondered if he was feeding a negative aspect of positive beliefs, if that makes sense. Thanks for joining us for another episode of Relationship Stories that'll make your heart skip a beat. If you were captivated by these tales, please hit the like button and share your thoughts in the comments. Don't miss out on any future episodes. Make sure to subscribe and turn on notifications for a steady dose of heartwarming stories.